Several military leaders have been named in Mali's new transitional government. The German foreign minister says an interim government in Libya could be formed in a matter of weeks. And a Kenyan court is set to issue a verdict in the trial of 3 men accused of aiding terrorists in the Westgate attack. Hello and welcome to Africa Live on CGTN with me, Beatrice Marshall, in Nairobi. Also coming up on the program. In business news, international bondholders reject Zambia's request to suspend interest payments. And in sports, Arsenal sign Ghana international Thomas Partey from Atletico Madrid on a deadline day. We begin the broadcast in Mali, where a new government has been formed, with some posts going to military officials, the ministries of defense, territorial administration. There are other issues that need to be addressed. Well, let's get more on this story, and I cross over to Mamadou Tapili, a journalist based in Bamako in Mali. Mamadou, thank you for joining us on the program. Tell us more about the choice of government and the changes in government and how the news is being received in Mali.
It was really harsh work which happened during the last week, more than a week, trying to decide to appoint a government. Which is the actual Prime Minister Mokhtar One. It was really a harsh work, but at the end, yesterday on Monday 5th, they have showed the proposal of the different ministers who has been appointed. There are 25 members in total, and then the key position is still taken by the military, which is the Defense Ministry and the Security Ministry, and also the National Reconciliation Ministry, which is known else than the ex-spokesman of the CNSP, the National Committee of the Salvation of People, and also the Ministry of Territorial Administrations, which is more about the organization which is in charge to organize the future elections. So these 4 ministries are very strategic to lead the transitions, is a way also to have an eye on it. But the question is saying that it's not against the Malian constitutions. In Mali, I mean, an active military can take part of a government, even recalled by the ex-mediator of the mediator of ECOWAS on his last meeting in Bamako. Goodluck Jonathan says that in Nigeria, for example, is not allowed to have an active military on the government, but in Mali, it's in our constitution. So I don't see any problem on that side. But apart from that, the other ministers that retain people's attentions is much more the Minister of Employment and Vocational Training, right, which is being which will be headed by Mohamed Salia Touré, is an ex-young youth from the M5 movement, and also another minister which is for the youth and sports. Will be led by Moussa Atayer, who is a member also of the CMA, the coordinations of Azawad movements, the rebellion movements in the north.
So let's look at
the other one is Aruna Touré, which is the Minister of Labor and Civil Service. He's also the platform against opposed to the federalism of the rebellion in the north.
So let's look at the
minister is the lady, which is very important to note. Is the daughter of the former the first democratic president and former president of Mali, Mr. Alpha Oumar Konaré, and also the wife of the ex-Minister of Foreign Affairs from the ex-government of Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta.
So let's look at the other changes that have happened here, Tapili, because very interesting changes that have taken place in government, but also looking back at what happened in Mali, the international community, and more importantly, the economic community of West African states had insisted on a return to civilian rule. Does the inclusion of military leaders in government go against this demand, and what do we expect going forward?
Well, this demand of ECOWAS was insisting on having like a purely civilian on the rule to rule the government, but actually it includes, because you have the CNSP, which through according to the recommendations of ECOWAS, they said that according to their recommendations, they said that the CNSP, after a nomination of appointing a government, a civilian government, the CNSP should be dissolved. So, which means the CNSP is that exists on the eyes of ECOWAS now, once we have already a government list, a government members. In this case, that's the reason. I think that's one of the questions where they have to, as the CNSP is dissolved, so they join a government to take part of the transition, to follow the transition. But as I was saying, it doesn't really, ECOWAS did not really trying to interfere also in the Malian internal policy. So that's the reason why they, as they say in the constitution, the militaries are allowed to participate in the government here in Mali, in the constitution. So ECOWAS, I don't see, as is not is the military are taking part in this government, won't make any problem, because this vice president's question has been solved in the charter with ECOWAS, why they will be in charge of the defense and the security. And those are also the two ministries that the militaries are occupying. So from that way, I don't see any other problem, because also the prime minister is a civilian. So I don't see any problem might normally come out from this.
All right, Mamadou Tapili joining us there from Bamako in Mali. Thank you. Now let's head up north to Libya, where Germany's Foreign Minister Heiko Maas has expressed optimism that an end to the ongoing conflict is getting even closer. In a statement, Maas said there are grounds for cautious optimism as talks between the warring factions continue. The two sides recently held a virtual conference that was led by the United Nations. However, there is still a lot of concern over the movement of arms to Libya. The German foreign minister says the latest developments could lead to the formation of an interim government in a matter of weeks and not months.
It is difficult to say when that is going to happen, but we do think that there's a window now in which many things are possible that were not possible before. And we do need to take advantage of this, so I think it's rather a question of weeks than months.
The U.S. president has returned to the White House after spending the weekend in the hospital with COVID-19. Donald Trump is urging people not to fear the virus, even as his doctors warned he's not yet fully recovered. Jagruti Dave has the details.
The president arrived in Marine One, which landed on the south lawn of the White House. He took his mask off and posed for the cameras before going inside the White House, remarkably. And doctors haven't really given us very much information about the extent of the president's condition, really avoiding talking about the specifics of his care. For example, we don't know what the condition of his lungs are, and we don't know when he last tested negative for the coronavirus. But the White House physician, Dr. Sean Conley, did say that the president was doing better and that he could be discharged.
Over the past 24 hours, the president has continued to improve. He's met or exceeded all standard hospital discharge criteria. He'll receive another dose of remdesivir here today, and then we plan to get him home. It's been more than 72 hours since his last fever. Oxygen levels, including ambulatory saturations and his work of breathing, are all normal.
So the president will be continued to be monitored at the White House. And according to a statement from the White House, there's going to be significantly limited physical contact with the president, and anyone who does will be wearing PPE.
And I know there's a risk, there's a danger, but that's okay. And now I'm better, and maybe I'm immune, I don't know. But don't let it dominate your lives. Get out there, be careful. We have the best medicines in the world, and it all happened very shortly, and they're all getting approved, and the vaccines are coming momentarily.
And that was a video that the president released shortly after, on social media, shortly after his arrival back at the White House. That was also accompanied by another video of with dramatic, sort of cinematic scoring of his arrival as landing in Marine One on the South Lawn and his arrival back at the White House. It's really a picture of a president victorious over coronavirus that he seems to be wanting to project. And whilst his illness and his diagnosis and now his quarantine means that he hasn't, and for a few days clearly will not be out on the campaign trail, which is his lifeblood of his campaign. He has been nonetheless campaigning on Twitter with videos like this and videos throughout his illness. He's also tweeted saying that he will be back on the campaign trail soon.
Hospitals in Tunisia are struggling to cope with an influx of COVID-19 patients, and medics are now urging members of the public to observe antivirus measures to avoid another lockdown. Prime Minister Hichem Meshishi has, however, ruled out a nationwide lockdown, even as the government imposed a curfew in the coastal regions of Sousse and Monastir. CGTN's Adnan Chauchi has the details.
Tunisian Prime Minister Hichem Meshishi visited several hospitals and COVID-19 treatment units. Meshishi says the government will address the shortage of health specialists in the country.
My visit to these public hospitals aims to establish how COVID-19 centers are struggling. The number of intensive care beds and oxygen-fitted ones will be doubled. Positive COVID-19 cases among doctors and paramedics particularly account for the shortage.
The Ministry of Health has also published a list of 33 private biomedical testing laboratories authorized to conduct COVID-19 tests. The laboratories, which have been approved by the Technical Committee of Medical Biology, are located in 8 different governorates.
The private sector plays an important role in supporting the public health sector. Several private laboratories have been authorized to conduct COVID-19 RT-PCR tests because public laboratories are overwhelmed following the recent surge in infections nationwide.
Many Tunisians have complied with the new prevention measures and the strict health protocols to avoid infection and hospitalization.
I just leave my house for 30 minutes per week. I don't go to the cafe to see my friends. I'm terrified because the rate of infection is on the rise. I don't want to go to the hospital.
The situation in the country is very dangerous. I avoid any contact with people and wear a mask only when in public places. From now on, I will wear it whenever I'm outdoors.
According to the latest data provided by the Ministry of Health and the COVID-19 Task Force, 116 patients have been admitted in intensive care units. Authorities aim to increase the number of ICU beds to 300 by October 15th. The COVID-19 Task Force announced that a general lockdown will be decreed in each region, with over 250 people infected with the virus per 100,000 inhabitants. Large gathering facilities, including cafes, will be closed. Movement to these areas will be prohibited, and the wearing of face masks will be mandatory, even in open spaces. Adnan Chauchi, CGTN, Tunis.
To Uganda now, and teachers there are unsure just when they will get back to work. Schools in the country were closed 7 months ago as one of the measures to reduce the spread of COVID-19. Some of the teachers have ventured into business while others remain unemployed. And as the world celebrated the International Teachers' Day, Isabel Nakiria met some of them and filed the following report.
Maureen Nantongo has found a new passion in the fruits business. She's moved from the classroom to selling passion fruits in the capital, Kampala. The junior university lecturer says COVID-19 left her jobless and life was hard.
I look after 5 people. I have my mother who's a stroke patient. I have my brother who stays with me. I had a maid who I could not say, please leave. The maid has a child. So I had to endeavor that my maid gets food. I bet to make sure that my mother has medication. So I just had no option but to work. So I had to put my, how do I call it, not professionalism, but the classy bit of it to go down into what we call, some people would call it dirty work.
With an initial capital of $100 that was given to her by a friend, Nantongo started buying passion fruits from farmers in western Uganda. She got most of her customers online because of restrictions on public transport during the lockdown. She now makes door-to-door deliveries.
In Kabale, I had to sleep in the market, and then in the morning I went to the farmers. I just went to the ladies who sell them and I asked them, I want to buy passion fruits, can you direct me? So out of those ones, one of them took me to the farmer.
A good number of teachers, especially those in private schools, had to look for alternative work to sustain themselves. Since school closed in March, school owners say they couldn't afford to continue paying teachers. Uganda is reopening school for final year students only as part of lifting COVID-19 restrictions. But only 1.2 million learners are expected to report back on 15th October, meaning many teachers will still stay jobless.
We are recalling the upper class teachers. Then the lower class teachers, we can't recall them now because we need to sustain them. You know, sustaining a human being is very hard, especially when the income is not coming in. Yeah, that is where the problem is. But it has been very tough, and it is still very tough.
The government has opened up much of the economy, but with a partial reopening of schools, there's a lot of uncertainty on just when full operations will actually begin. Nantongo says she will continue with her passion fruit business, even if she is able to return to teaching again. Isabel Nakiria, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
A Kenyan court will on Tuesday issue a verdict in a case involving 3 suspects linked to the Westgate Mall terror attack. The 3 men are accused of aiding al-Qaeda-linked militants to launch the 2013 attack in which 67 people were killed. Somali Islamist insurgents al-Shabaab claimed the September 21st attack on the shopping complex. The gunmen shot at shoppers and held parts of the building under siege for 4 days. The extremists said the attack was a retaliation to Kenya's move to send troops to Somalia. The verdict was expected on Monday, but the court pushed it to Tuesday. For more on this, I'm now joined by CGTN's Daniel Arapmoy, who's live for us in Nairobi. Daniel, tell us more about the charges that the suspects face and their defense.
Well, thank you very much, Beatrice. Now, this judgment was supposed to have been made yesterday, but reports that we are getting from the court here is that the judgment wasn't ready as yet. So we do hope that today the judgment will be delivered. There are, of course, a lot of people that are waiting that justice will be served today. So we do hope that in the afternoon, we are told that it will be around 2:30 or 2 p.m., around about that time, that the judgment will be delivered. So we're here waiting patiently to see if that will be done today. But of course, it's been long overdue since 2013. This judgment has been lingering. So we hope today some positivity will indeed come out of this judgment. But of course, the 3 are being charged of aiding and abetting terrorism. And that is a charge that they are facing. But of course, they have denied having participated in this. But we will find out this afternoon if that is indeed the case. And of course, according to the laws of Kenya, anybody who abates or aids a terrorism act is liable upon conviction to imprisonment not exceeding 20 years. So, but one thing that we must remember is that the gunmen themselves that carried out this attack were actually killed when Kenyan forces retook Westgate Mall. So the 3 suspects that are here before court today are those that aided and abetted in terms of financing the activities of the Al-Shabaab. So in that case, there will be a sentence basing on either they taking 20 years or less than 20 years. So we wait to hear from the judge today, this afternoon, as they get ready to deliver the final judgment.
All right, Daniel Arapmoy, following the judgment there on the Kenyan Westgate terrorist attack. You're watching Africa Live. It's still ahead on our program. In our series on food production in Africa, find out why post remains a big concern for farmers.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent. to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Aden, Tunis, Cairo, Juba, Johannesburg, Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
We now bring you our ongoing series on food production in Africa. Lindy Mtongana takes us to Egypt, Nigeria and Uganda, where we focus on fish and rice production and the challenge of food wastage. Over to you, Lindy.
In today's second installment of CGTN Africa's series on food production, we take a look at bulk production and food waste in Africa. With the rising demand for nutritious animal-based protein, Egypt is expanding its production of fish. Since 2015, the country has witnessed a boom in fish farms that has seen production increase by nearly 25%. The World Fish Organization has been one of the active arms in assisting the country to introduce new technologies and empower youth in this sector. Through its projects, nearly 4,000 fish farmers have been trained on best management practices, new technologies, and ensuring the best use of water resources and feeds. CGTN's Adel Al-Mahroui has more.
Egypt produces 2 million tons of fish every year. It's the 7th largest producer in the world and the top in Africa. Aquaculture's share is 80% of that market. With water quality and environmental pollution becoming a growing challenge for Egypt, fisheries are becoming the most reliable source for supplying the market with good quality. I'm here in Abbesa village in Sharqiya governorship, about 2 hours drive northeast of Cairo. This is one of the biggest fish research facilities in Egypt. It's managed by World Fish, a leading international organization that helps nations develop their fish quality and production capacity.
Our studies here at World Fish have shown very clearly that farmed fish is much more safer than fish that comes from other systems, because we don't know the systems that are there. In farming fish, you have control of everything that goes into the pond. You're also able to control fish health. We have almost cut zero any use of antibiotics because the fish are kept in the right environment.
Harrison Carisa's PhD research was made in this facility focused on tilapia fish. Researchers here are currently working on developing newly adopted system called In-Pond Raceway System, IPRS for short. It proved its efficiency in catfish. Now Egypt is becoming the first country in the world to test that system on tilapia.
You don't need to change the water. You only add a little bit. In a regular pond, the water is static, and then there's no mechanism to remove the waste. But in this pond, you have a system where you can remove, in that place you can also remove the waste.
This project produces an average size fish, but the brilliance of this technology is that it can go up to 2 production cycles a year, giving it an advantage of producing 4 more times fish than regular ponds. Carissa showed me how they're using polypropylene instead of concrete to cut the IPRS cost for local breeders. With 2 years in return on investment, and at a cost of at least $8,000, the technology is still too expensive for local breeders. Once the fish was out of the pond, Ahmed Abu Muhammad showed up. For more than 30 years, he has been trading fish. But he only works with fish farms that he has inspected before and trusts their breeding process.
The years have built my reputation, and that's something I cannot risk. So I only buy from the farms I know how they breed the fish. There are people who manipulate some steps in the process, which will reflect in the fish's taste. Some have poor water quality or bad fish food. Here, the fish is always good, and when I sell it to the trader, they ask for that same fish once again.
Ahmed takes the fish to shops in the local market. This is Obur, the biggest food market in Egypt. In the fish section here, some clients are still not comfortable with fishes coming from farms.
Fish farms do not produce any fish varieties, only catfish and tilapia. It's why I prefer sea fish. They taste better and the quality is good.
For the Egyptian masses though, catfish and tilapia are the most affordable, so demand here is phenomenal.
Some people think fresh catch fish tastes better than in farms, but that's no longer true. There's always growing demand on the farms. Some clients do specifically demand farms fish, and catfish is the #1 popular fish in Egypt. There's always room to supply the market. We always need more.
Because it's one of the leading fish producers in the world, Egypt is becoming a hub for Africans to learn about the industry. Since 1998, World Fish has trained some 4,000 people from 112 countries. At least 1,000 of them are Egyptian.
We launched here what we call the Fish for Africa Innovation Hub. This is a game changer in my opinion, because it's going to help African countries to access Egypt in a more organized manner. We want to have entrepreneurs coming here to learn. We want to have innovators coming here to test their new innovations.
I left World Fish heading to Ekwa. It's among the smallest and poorest villages in Egypt. I came to see how Ahlam Saeed is selling her fish in this humble market. She is one of the benefactors of World Fish Women Empowerment Program.
I was forced to work in the fish business. I didn't like it at all. In Abasa, World Fish gave me theoretical and practical training. They taught us how to manufacture fish, how to market ourselves. They increased our confidence to take bolder steps. I then learned about the online business. I now sell well. I know how to negotiate.
Before her World Fish training, Ahlam told me that she used to sell the remaining fish stock at the end of the day at half or 1/3 the price, or else it'll get ruined. After her training, she started taking back the remaining fish. At her workshop at home, she processed them into different kinds of salted fish and sells them online at an added value.
Medina? I sell online in Zagazig city. There is demand for my work. In the countryside, women don't mind saving 30 cents and doing it themselves. They have no job. But in the city, a woman has a job. She doesn't want the hassle of added work, so she buys it online.
Ahlam, on her micro scale, has been maximizing her revenues from the business. Egypt, too, is expanding massively. The national target is to reach 5 million tons of fish annually. It will need all sorts of innovations, especially those to expand sea fisheries. Adil Mahroui, CGTN, Sharqiya, Egypt.
Nigeria is undergoing what some have termed a revolution in local rice production. From being a global net importer of rice, Africa's largest economy is now on the verge of becoming one of the biggest exporters of the product. CGTN's Deji Badmus has been looking at the efforts of the smallholder rice farmers in helping Nigeria achieve self-sufficiency in rice, a very popular staple in the country.
If everything goes according to plan, Nigeria will achieve self-sufficiency in rice in the next 2 years and even begin to export. And if that happens, it will be thanks in part to local rice farmers like John Sauta. He's one of over 10 million local rice farmers across Nigeria who are contributing their quota to help the country attain food security. And Sauta does not just grow his own rice. He does the milling as well at his small rice mill right in the middle of his rice farm in Nasarawa State, north-central Nigeria.
We started with just a hectare. I don't know, it's up to a hectare itself. And then we use basically our hand, we use our own labor. We don't have machineries then. So In fact, it's more of human labor. But as times goes on, when we are, as we upgrade on, we are able to get a bigger hectare. And today, we are using machineries.
The expansion of his rice enterprise was partly made possible through a low-interest loan scheme known as Anchor Borrowers Program, driven by the country's central bank. Launched by the government in 2015, the loan scheme essentially provides farm inputs in kind and cash through a special microfinance bank known as NISAL to smallholder farmers to boost production of some key commodities.
With the support we had from the government, though little support, and we appreciate the government for that, we've been able to get these machines from China, and then some being fabricated here in Nigeria, like the parboiling system. We have a miller, destoner, polisher, a big, Then we are milling just a capacity of 500 kg in a day, but now we're milling about 24 tons in a day.
From just 1 hectare when he started out, Sauta's rice farm has also expanded to over 10 hectares. And even that, he says, is not enough.
But we also as well partner with other farmers to buy their product, and then we go to the market too to buy product, even though at times you face these challenges of not getting the right seed.
While the special loan scheme has indeed helped in boosting domestic rice production to an average of 7 million tons per annum, agribusiness experts say much still needs to be done to ensure farmers benefit directly from the initiative.
The mindset of the policy is to get to the root of the farmers so that they can get the benefit. But accessing those benefits is always a challenge.
While the central bank has restricted importers of rice from accessing forex through the official market, these restrictions have led to a huge decline in imports. Local rice farmers are now filling the void and creating jobs in the process.
We started as a one-man business, but today we have up to 15 staffs. So now, even without the government job, you now discover that because of this company, we're able to actually provide jobs for people around.
It's certainly a good time for rice farmers in the country. They are now in a race against time to help Africa's largest economy achieve rice self-sufficiency. And if they are able to cross the finish line in the next 2 years, that will be a remarkable turning point for a country that is still struggling to leverage on its huge agricultural potential. Deji Badmos, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
Uganda is experiencing a build-up in food stock following the closure of the country's borders to stop the spread of the coronavirus. On top of a bumper harvest, the restrictions on transport have left farmers struggling to sell their produce, leading to food waste and a severe decline in food prices. CGTN's Michael Baleke tells us more.
Jennifer Chirabo has cut down on business trips across the border. Banana farming has sustained her for over 20 years. But she says this is the first peak harvest in her lifetime that hasn't borne fruit for her financially.
Before the pandemic was announced, I used to harvest over 50 bunches of bananas every Sunday. But now I'm stuck with food. Every farmer in my village is stuck with food. It's so frustrating.
Jennifer lives 5 kilometers from the Uganda-Rwanda border. Much of the food here is sold across. But since March, all Uganda's borders have remained closed to small-scale traders like Jennifer.
We obtained loans for agricultural inputs like fertilizers, seeds, and we used some to pay school fees, hoping to pay back after the harvest. We now risk losing our properties to the banks.
Much of the bananas produced in Uganda are consumed locally. The surplus is exported to neighbors like Kenya, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and South Sudan. Some of these bananas are due for harvest, but there is no ready market. And instead of letting them rot away, Jennifer collects them and feeds them to the animals, which have also run out of food because of the drought. Just like banana farming, dairy farmers in this region are also experiencing surpluses. Mirabel Mirembe, a cattle keeper, says they have been offering excess milk freely to people who need it. She says A pint of fresh milk is now 2 cents compared to $1 6 months ago.
I produce close to 100 liters of milk per day, but the dairies are not buying it. I have tried to add value by making yogurt and ghee, but no one is buying. We are consuming it ourselves. We are helpless.
In the absence of wholesale traders who previously collected the food directly from villages, now some farmers are taking their produce to local markets in major towns using bicycles in the hope for better prices.
The biggest problem is the closure of borders. We don't have a market for this food. We are now investing a lot of our time and money to move products across the country looking for market. It's not easy, and we sometimes make losses.
At the recent Regional Heads of State Summit held online, Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni called on African leaders to open up their markets to the country's surplus food stocks.
It's a dilemma that some parts of Africa don't have enough food. Here, the food is rotting. This is really not good management. So we should cooperate and take advantage of all these advantages.
The UN wants governments like Uganda to introduce regulation to reduce post-harvest losses in food supply chains at national and regional levels. Farmers in Uganda looking forward to reopening of the borders so that they can secure their properties from banks and put some money in their pockets. Michael Baleke, CGTN, Western Uganda.
In today's Expert Perspective segment, we take a look at Africa's freehold land systems and the lack of professional food storage.
If you talk about fresh produce, we see up to 40% of food go to waste in the US, and that's due to deterioration after harvesting. Now, the United States is one country, right? So obviously transportation and infrastructure make it easier for us because we're not having to, transport foods from one country to another across several borders. So I think that is an advantage, obviously, in the US.
So, sun drying is one of the methods that are used for preservation and reducing post-harvest loss. How does the United States go about this?
Produce goes into a large production facility and it's rapidly air dried. And that process takes, a lot less time and it's much more rapid. So you have much less loss of food, from the time it's harvested until the time it's preserved. So it's about infrastructure. It's about investing in transportation systems. It's about investing in food production facilities that can rapidly preserve food and then get it on a truck or a plane or a ship and rapidly get it to the next place. Because when you talk about things like produce, it has a very low shelf life. So even if you add a certain amount of additives or preservatives to the food, eventually produce is going to go bad. You could argue the same with something like seafood. So I think investing in technology and supply chains are key, again, not only in Africa, but all over the world as our food supply becomes more global.
Egypt has its own set of staple foods defining the country, from mashed fava bean sandwiches to fava falafel and koshari. But there is one traditional dish that has a special place in the hearts of almost all Egyptians, molokhia. In our Food Cultures in Africa segment, we bring you this green stew that has outstanding nutritional value and a mouth-watering taste.
Every morning, these women come here to separate the leaves from the stem. The scientific name for this plant is Corchorus oletorius, also known as jute mallow. But here in Egypt, it is named after the delicious local dish made out of it, molokhia. The dish has more iron than spinach, more potassium than bananas, and is very rich in calcium, magnesium, phosphorus. More importantly, it's super delicious. After it becomes a paste, the leaves then leave to Sobhi Kabir, a popular restaurant here in Cairo, and I followed it.
For 8 years, I've been working here as a molokhea cook. That's the only dish I do. I learnt a special way to do it, and I've become an expert in it. It's all that I can do.
This is one of the busiest kitchens in the Egyptian capital. Molokhea, however, is prepared in its own section, far from the noise, so the cooks could focus. They mix the paste with fresh meat and pigeon's broth, adding to it dried coriander to turn it into a stew. When the leaves are cooked, it's mixed with fried chopped garlic. Sounds simple? Yet not any chef could adjust the stew to garlic ratio or the broth taste. Any error in the mixture could make the dish lose its texture.
Garlic is the most important ingredient in molokhea. It gives it about 60 to 70% of its flavor. There isn't a table here that doesn't order molokhea. Let me show you how it's served.
This is the most important step of making molokhea. When the stew is mixed with the fried garlic, it makes a sound. We call it tasha. In Egyptian tradition, if a kind-hearted cook gasps during the tasha, the molokhea will taste better than ever. Of course, that doesn't happen in restaurants, but the tasha has gained significance, and many chefs like Zizo try to make it as entertaining as possible. It is now the guests' turn to enjoy. Molokhea is usually eaten with bread folded to a cone shape. We say a cat's ear shape. As for the taste,
Molokhea here is out of this world. The only thing missing is our famous bread in the rural. It is spongy, so a dip of bread carries a lot of the stew.
I come here at least once a month to enjoy the molokhea. The first thing I order is molokhea. There's no Egyptian who doesn't like it. It's who we are.
the stew may look unattractive, but only to those who haven't tasted it. Once it's in your mouth, it becomes so hard to let go of it. Rimon Nassif hasn't been to Egypt in a year and a half. As soon as he arrived, his wife brought him here for the best molokhea in town.
When I came here, I have to eat molokhea. Give it to me back, all the memory from my childhood. Every Egyptian, they love molokhea. It's traditional food. It's like that's how we grow up with Egypt here. So you can say the molokhea, it's like the hamburger in America.
Because it has no animal protein, molokhea is quite affordable. With all its nutritious values, it's a super and delicious food available to everyone. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
Kenya, South Africa and Nigeria are using farming technologies to attract young people into agriculture. For this and more, join us tomorrow. Back to you in studio.
Thank you, Lindy. We'll join you tomorrow as you bring us more on food production on the continent. Let's now take a look at your business news. Here's what's ahead. International bondholders reject Zambia's request to suspend interest payments.
It's just taken me completely out of my depth, but at the same time, it's exciting. It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really exciting.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Zambia's currency is already the worst performing in Africa so far in 2020, and it continues to fall against the US dollar. It hit another record low today at 20.075 kwacha to the dollar, bringing its YTD declined to 42%. Last week, a group of investment firms made up of 14 US and Europe-based financial institutions rejected the government's request for a 6-month suspension of interest payments. In late September, the world's second-largest copper producer asked private holders of its Eurobonds to suspend interest payment demands on $3 billion worth of international bonds between October 2020 and April 2021. The 3 bonds were issued starting in 2012, and they're just part of Zambia's $12 billion debt load. The country's public debt as a percentage of GDP has risen rapidly from 20% of GDP to 78%. The debt servicing freeze, if agreed to, would have been the first de facto debt default on private creditors since the start of the pandemic. Nigeria's government has increased the passengers per flight limit for international airlines to 200 passengers. CGTN's Phil Ihaza has the details from the federal capital, Abuja.
The announcement was made by the Director General of the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority, Musa Nuhu, who stated that the new development is targeted at helping foreign airlines make more revenue from sale of tickets during this period of the pandemic. According to Nuhu, 2 of the country's major international airports, the Murtala Mohammed International Airport in Lagos and the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport in Abuja, will see on average 3,600 passengers combined on a daily basis. The NCAA boss stated that the review followed the request for additional flight frequencies by the foreign airlines last month to cater to the rise in demand of travelers in and out of the country. Increasing the passenger capacity to 200 per flight now means the airlines can sell about 25,000 seats per week rather than a previous 15,000 seats per week. Since the government reopened its international airspace in September, it has only allowed a few airlines to resume flight operations as part of its gradual easing of restrictions on its airspace. Nuhu, however, directed that all operating airlines must ensure they maintain strict compliance with the COVID-19 health protocols as issued by authorities in order not to hinder the government's efforts in combating the outbreak and returning air travel to normalcy again. Phil Ihaza, CGTN, Abuja.
Egypt has announced discounts for passengers using public transportation. Authorities in the North African economy are seeking ways of cushioning the most vulnerable from the economic damage caused by COVID-19. CGTN's Yasa Hakim has the details from Cairo.
Public transportation in the North African nation is in the middle of a major overhaul that started 3 years ago. A new railway system is being put in place. Underground metro is expanding at high rates, and public buses are being replaced with new, more comfortable and eco-friendly ones. The cost runs into billions of dollars, but that has not stopped the state from taking steps to help low-income segments navigate the COVID-19 economic crisis.
The government had to reduce subsidies on tickets to cover part of the increasing cost on the upgraded transportation services. This slightly increased ticket prices, but the new discount package ensures the elderly are not affected. The current leadership in Egypt since 2013 has been giving extra attention to the elderly, who had relatively been ignored before. It provides them with better services to ease their living conditions, this time giving 50% discount for 60-year-olds and free transport for those over 70 years. There is also discounts for normal passengers related to the number of trips they take.
Citizens have felt the positive effects of the latest decisions, which is part of efforts by the state to serve most vulnerable populations.
The ticket prices are already cheaper than private sector transportation, but the discounts for elderly are essential because our income dropped when we retired. In addition, the quality of services and state of the metro, trains and buses are of top quality after the upgrades.
This is part of a comprehensive social welfare program being implemented by Cairo. The state has been making efforts to protect a large segment of the society from the recession caused by the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Since the outbreak of the coronavirus, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi has focused on helping employees and part-time laborers who lost their income. From last April, the state has been handing out a monthly allowance on this segment till the end of the year to survive the economic effects of the pandemic.
Micro-enterprises, mainly in poor neighborhoods, have also been funded by banks to ensure that small projects remain productive and sustain the families that benefit from them. The budget allocated for social welfare programs since the epidemic hit the country last March has been a burden on the state. But the bill might even be higher if there is an outbreak of a second wave of the virus towards 2021. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Let's now take a look at your sports news. Here's what's ahead. Arsenal signed Ghana international Thomas Partey from Atletico Madrid on deadline day.
Tomorrow on CGTN Africa special series on food production in Africa, we bring you innovation and technology. From Kenya's aquaponics and the wheat farm application to Nigeria's aeroponics, and of course, FAO using technology to monitor pests in Africa. Stay tuned for this and more.